Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. We're starting to near the end of the very first Grand Arena Championship, number 1, and this is the finals for our third round of matches, so that's episode 9 out of 12, and this is a pretty exciting one just because it's finals, and finals are always just a little more tense just because both players are undefeated up to this point. They are presumably the closest matched, based entirely off of your win-loss record, and your rosters are hopefully going to be pretty even. In this case, my opponent was actually also from Team Instinct, and Team Instinct is one of the top guild families in the entire game. I don't know which branch of that family my opponent was in, but I was excited to be able to play a finals against someone from that extremely esteemed group of individual. Now, I want to take just a brief moment to plug my podcast that we've been working on for a while now. We have like 5 episodes out at this point, and it's completely based off of Grand Arena Championship. If you are interested, please check out the link in the video description. So, moving on to the match. Looking at my opponent's stats on paper, it looks like they are advantaged in almost every significant way. They have more Gear 13, well, just by 1. I do have a couple more Zetas and Gear 12s, though that doesn't mean as much. But they also have a lot more mods. Like, their mods are significantly better than mine, which is something we've come to expect, of course. The awesome part is that I do have a faster Darth Revan and Badstila, so it's going to hopefully not going to be a huge obstacle for me moving forward. When I first got into this match, I noticed that my opponent had already full cleared me, which is not the most awesome sight. Seeing all your little stick figure guys just fall over and die is not my favorite, but my opponent had failed a couple attacks, and we'll go over my defenses in a little bit, but it did give me a little bit of breathing room in case I failed my own attacks or was a little bit inefficient, which is always nice. So one thing that I noticed right away was that there was an Old Republic team with Watt, and you can see that he was not that squishy despite only being 5 stars. My opponent had put a ton of crit avoid on Zalbar with his kit. Combined, it means that I was not going to really be doing that many critical hits against Zalbar. I really wasn't sure how I was going to beat that team. At first, I'd been thinking about it for a while just because the team is something that I've heard about quite a few times, and it's a significant threat, but at the same time, like, you don't want to waste other teams that you need for later down the line on it. So I'd been thinking about this counter for a while, and what I finally came up with was Imperial Troopers with Thrawn. Now, you need Death Trooper here for reasons I'll explain in a little bit, but the whole goal here is really just to be able to wipe the board while Zalbar isn't taunting, and the thing that Watt does really good, like, he's amazing, is his very first move. His Zeta gives him a bonus turn before anyone else, so it's kind of like Han's first shot move, and he'll put immediately his buff that is not able to be dispelled, he'll put it onto the tank, and the tank will always taunt until they don't have any protection left, but then it also buffs their protection, regen, and everything, and Zalbar already has a ton of protection regen. So, I mean, if you want to look at his kit, take a look, but my thought was if I could just get Fracture onto Zalbar, then I could take him out. And then the real question was, like, could the troopers take out Zalbar in the first place? Like, you just don't really know until you try it, and so I just took Death Trooper, and once you get Death Mark on Zalbar, he just goes down like a sack of something I'm not going to say on this channel. So it was a pretty gratifying win, 58 banners against a squad that I'd been kind of nervous to face for a while, so that was a really great win for me. We've been seeing this common thread of people taking Darth Revan teams without Bastila on the team and putting him on defense, and that's what my opponent did here. I have a feeling that's just kind of the fancy tech that Team Instinct and all the other high-end guilds are starting to adopt, and I think it's pretty effective. I mean, the Darth Revan team still beats every other team that tries to counter when they don't have Badstila. So it really, like, you're able to use Badstila on another team, and really, like, she makes other Sith teams incredibly strong, and so it's definitely worth taking a look at if you want to put your Darth Revan team on defense, which I typically do not. What I typically want to do, I want to make sure that I can beat every single team on offense, and right now I don't have another team that really can consistently beat Darth Revan, and that really might change now that we have all these relic upgrades and all this stuff, all the madness that's transpiring currently. We will see, but as of right now, I can't beat other Darth Revan teams consistently. I don't really want to put 2 Zetas on T3, which I could, and I'm willing to if this meta continues for another, like, 6 months like it has already, but I'm hoping that pretty soon Darth Revan will be relegated to the 2nd strongest team in the game, and, you know, something like clones or like Mace Windu, outcast Jedi that suck currently will instead take their place. So anyways, let's move on. I was able to beat their Darth Revan squad with only having lost one of my own members, and I decided that I would use Traya against the Geonosians in the next front zone, just because I still had Jedi Knight Revan available and Padme, and those two combined could probably take on anything else in the hidden zone. The zone that I had revealed were troopers and weak-ish clones, and so I knew that I would be able to take those with other teams other than Padme and Jedi Knight Revan, so I was free to be able to use Traya against these Geonosians. And here you can see the Geonosian spy just kind of surprised Traya and destroyed her with one hit. And that does happen every once in a while. That's not something that I love. These Geonosians were actually modded really, really well, and really well geared. They're all really close to gear 13, and I really kind of, it's going to be scary to see a full gear 13 plus relics Geonosian squad, but as it stands, they're all still on the gear 12, with, I guess, half of them are gear 12 and half of them are gear 13. And that was still scary enough. Like, if I hadn't taken all 4 of those characters, I probably would have lost this match, and well, at least that attack, I should say, and maybe the match, frankly. But as it stood, I was able to withstand that, and hopefully my super secret awesome tech for the next phase against Geonosians will really help me later. And that super secret tech being that I accidentally put gear 13 on Scion recently. It's a kind of an annoying story, so we'll talk about that later, or hopefully we'll all just forget about it. So moving into this match, I was probably the most confident out of any of the matches that I had to face this time, just because I've played against the Qi'ra Nest combination so often. And really, I mean, that's probably a good argument to start switching things up. Like, right now, I currently have Qi'ra sitting with Nest on defense, and I should probably change that, because if I'm getting used to that match, so is every other person. And really, like, the idea is to trip people up on defense, not provide them with the opportunity to get max banners. And so maybe I will be looking into that later. It's just so hard not to put Nest with Qi'ra, just because they do so many good things with each other. So my goal here is just to, once again, take out all of the support pieces for Nest. Nest is decent. Of course, she's like a great character, but against Kylo Ren unmasked, like, she's really not that great, just because you have the 2-turn stun. And once you get rid of all of the support pieces for Nest, you start being able to really just control the board and be able to get whatever score you want, provided you have enough time. And so here I am, just trying to get as many hits in as I can against the other guys, and hitting Nest every once in a while, just because now she had protection up, she had a turn, and now I can hit her again and be able to knock more protection down. So once you get through that protection, then you have to get through her health. But if you can kind of whittle away at her over the course of time, like it's probably just a better choice to be able to do that, rather than just trying to take all of her health after you've already beat the rest of the squad. So I was trying to chip away. She kind of regenerated some of her protection because that's what the Qi'ra team does so well. But here I have a stun on Nest, and now I can just kind of go crazy and get max banners if I want. I just need to get tenacity down on her, which I have now, and so now I can kind of just keep hitting her indefinitely. And I decided that I was just going to not try to get full protection on First Order Officer. I know that maybe that's a little bit irresponsible, but in the end, I didn't have a ton of time due to real life circumstances. It was going to just be better if I took a win. My opponent had already failed a couple attacks that it meant that I could have just a little bit of leeway in my banners, and that's maybe not the best approach to take. It actually isn't. It's not just like a maybe, but as it stands, I am able to get 59 banners, and that is an acceptable number. If you're only going to accept 60 banners for an attack, then you're probably going to get sad. Even though this attack, you've probably seen me do it in the past where I've gotten 60 banners consistently. Here in the back zone, there wasn't anything that was too crazy scary. The General Grievous squad obviously concerned me quite a bit, just because they had 3 Gear 13s, and that starts getting into the range where they just have so many hit points that it's really hard to chew through them. They have all that armor and all of the everything that makes that squad strong, and so trying to beat that squad with my previous Jedi Knight Revan teams have really struggled. Anything after having 2 Gear 13s, I have generally lost my first match against them and had to go in with the second team. And the difference in this match that gave me kind of some hope was I've been using Hermit Yoda as the 5th member of this team, and he is really great against the General Grievous squad here. You know, you want to use Bastila lead, and that is just because she gives you so much extra bonus protection, but then also when you have that protection, you have an incredibly high level of tenacity, and that tenacity is going to be money, just because one of the things the General Grievous teams really enjoy is having turn meter shenanigans, and that happens only when they have target lock on your characters. And if they can't apply target lock because you have really high tenacity, it means that you're going to be able to you're going to be resisting all of that, and they're going to get way less turn meter. And so early in the match, if you can kind of control the board just by making sure that your opponent doesn't have a ton of turn meter shenanigans, that's great. So you can see here that I did a mark on B2. It's very rare that I'm not able to just take him out in my first wave of attacks, but my opponent had modded this team incredibly well, and I guess I wasn't that surprised by it. Once you take out B2, the whole point of the match is trying to get Grievous. So in previous matches, I've actually done things where I have just kind of messed around and tried to kill B1 and Magna Guard at the same time or whatever. And after some further contemplation and looking at some various videos that are out there, I decided that I was just going to go for Grievous right after B2. You need to take out B2 first, just because he's going to get a million turns. As you're hitting Grievous, he's just going to keep taking turn after turn and debuffing you. So if you can take out B2 first and then start working on Grievous, that's probably the ideal way to do things. And Grievous is he has so much health, it's really daunting. My opponent actually had a pretty low health pool just because they didn't use health set mods, they used crit damage mods, which means that their Grievous hit maybe a little bit harder. I haven't done the math, but it certainly was a little intimidating. And he did seem to certainly chop down my health pool and protection pool pretty quick, so maybe that's a good choice, but the result was He only had about 90k health, and the Grievous that we're looking at right now in this state of the game before relics is the average Grievous is going to be somewhere between 110k and 120k health, so this was significantly less, and so I was able to claw through him pretty quick. And after he's gone, then I could really just focus on trying to get as many banners as I could in this match. The rest of these guys on their own, like, they're great support pieces for Grievous, but Grievous is necessary for this team to work. You just absolutely need him in order to do anything. And so even though B1 is amazing, he does a lot of damage, he does just need Grievous. And Newt is a great support piece. He's not going to carry the squad, he's not going to deal a huge amount of damage, and so you can kind of just take your time and pick them apart. And 59 banners is something I really wasn't expecting going into this match. There's just so much, there was so much hitting power on the Grievous side, and I was concerned that I wasn't even going to be able to beat the squad in one hit, but I was, obviously. And so the next biggest threat, the most credible one, was absolutely the clone team, and Shaak Ti lead was only gear 9 because my opponent apparently didn't just have a ton of extra Qi'ra tech just sitting around, so I was going to be happy with that. One thing that I did this weekend was I tested out Commander Luke against clone teams in a few different configurations, and what I found is that Commander Luke does a more than adequate job of taking out clones in their current iteration. That may obviously change once we get more information, or rather once we finally get the character that they've been promising to give us. We're probably going to get another clone or something, but as it currently stands, Commander Luke, as long as they have a reasonably close level of gear to the clones, it's just not really that close. Like, I was confident enough here, as you can see, that I took an undersized squad, which I didn't need to. I could absolutely have taken the Captain Han as kind of a help, but as it stands, like, it was just a pretty easy win. And maybe that will change also if Shaak Ti is like gear 12 or gear 13. But I kind of think it wouldn't. That team just really isn't super strong as currently constructed, and so it was fine. I was glad that I was able to get the win here and move on, and I really hope that clones are going to get a decent bump up. They're certainly poised to, and there's not really like a really strong candidate for their 5th slot. So moving on to the final matches, I had Jango lead, Bounty Hunters left, and Imperial Troopers, which Imperial Troopers on defense are a really interesting choice because of how many teams they counter still on defense. But as it stands, I was happy enough to receive that gift from my opponent, and Imperial Troopers do have some good things, but we'll talk about that later. I decided that the Padme squad would probably do the best against the Jango team. I had Padme and Jedi Training Rey left, and Jedi Training Rey is more than capable of beating this Jango team, especially because this Jango team isn't incredibly fast like some of the squads that I've been facing lately, but it was still a credible threat in terms of, like, I didn't have a ton of teams that I was going to be able to counter with, and Jedi Training Rey always loses quite a few banners against Jango, and if you've been following this channel for a while, then you'll know that I have really struggled trying to find a team to be able to beat Jango, and typically I just take troopers now. Like, I put incredibly fast mods on Stark to make sure that I went first in any of these Jango lead encounters, but I had already used that team against Carth Old Republic, and I didn't really regret that. And here, getting 57 banners, it's not extremely wonderful, but I was pretty confident moving into this last round, this last fight, because the Imperial Troopers are great on offense, but they require a player to actually be guiding them through how to play. And they also require, like, if you need to stay away from certain matches with Imperial Troopers for them to be effective. Like, you can't just throw them against any team and assume they're going to win. Like, there are certain conditions that need to be met in order for you to achieve success, and that's a really great tool when you're controlling them on offense. But on defense, they really just don't do enough. Like, I was able to go first because BB-8 has his special, and it makes Rey incredibly fast. My opponent's Dark was somewhere, I think, like right at 295 speed, but BB-8 was well beyond that, entirely because of his unique ability, which gives him extra turn meter at the start. And so really, like, from the very start, troopers need to be able to go first. That's the number one thing, and if they can't go first, they're really going to struggle. And then against teams that have access to daze and things, and dispel and all the things that make troopers strong, like, troopers really want to be able to assist. And once you're able to take out ranged trooper, or you're able to daze everyone, then it's just kind of over. Like, troopers can't do a whole lot against that. And here you can see me, I'm getting a little bit sloppy with Finn. Instead of using his ability that gives protection and health regen, which I needed to be able to get better banners on this in this fight, I just used my special shot, because that's what's the most fun apparently, and I wasn't focusing that much. This match really doesn't require a huge amount of focus anyways, assuming that you have a faster team. And so I was able to win. I was trying to slow it down a little bit so I could use his regen, but it didn't work, so I got 57 banners. 57 banners is okay, because my opponent had, like I said, failed a couple attacks previously, and because of that, I was able to kind of play it a little bit looser, and I ended at right at 1900, which is significantly lower than I prefer to be able to take a match, but it was I dropped 20 banners from a perfect score, so that wasn't too bad. So looking at my defenses, my top front zone with Emperor Palpatine and Geonosians got one-shotted entirely, and then the back zone had General Grievous defend 3 times before he was finally pulled down on his 4th. My opponent then beat my Night Sisters at Gear 13, Qi'ra, and my Dooku team that has never gotten a defense got one-shotted, which was no real surprise for reasons I've talked about in this video. And then my clone zone, as I like to call them, as cheesy as it sounds, just because we have Jango and Boba and all the clones in there, they didn't get a defense either. So I basically won just because my opponent kind of stubbed his toe on General Grievous, which is a great feeling, though that's kind of a precarious position. If they had not failed the 2 attacks beforehand, if like they had 2-shot General Grievous, I think I would have been in a lot more precarious of a place, just because I would have won. But if I had failed 1 attack against my opponent at any point, then I would have ended up drawing against them. So I'm glad I was fortunate to be able to one-shot all of my opponent's teams. They had a lot of really interesting teams to be able to face, and I welcome the opportunity to face other high-end players as well. But as it stands, guys, I think we're done. We have 3 more matches to go, and hopefully I can make Kyber League before the 3rd match, which would mean I'd need to win my next 2, I believe. But you know, the goal is always the march toward Kyber, but it's nice not to have to put that pressure on myself to be able to, you know, I didn't want to have to run the board for my final 3 matches. You know, if I can win 2 of them, that should be enough to get me there. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.